Oh, I've primped. Do you need to primp, Tom?
I'm all primped. I'm as primped as I'm gonna get.
Yeah. This is as good as it gets for me.
So welcome to our monthly fight to the death fly tying contests with Tom Rosenbauer and Tim Flagler, and Julia is here. I know you're all happy that Julia's here. Julia's primping. I wanted her to be on the screen when we started, but she's fixing her hair or something. Tim and I already fixed our hair as well as it's going to be fixed. So anyway,
that's actually true. I was fixing my hair.
There you go. Oh, you look so much.
It's so hot in this office. I'm dying. But hey, everybody, may the best tire win.
Thank you, Julia.
I think we already know who that is. based on most of 2021.
Yeah, but this is your fly, Tom, and I'm not a carp fly guy, so you got some secrets in there, I'm sure, that I don't know.
Well, if you beat me on this one, it's going to be doubly embarrassing. And it's not my fly.
Yep, so Mike Schmidt's.
Yeah, this fly is a creation of a fly tyer named Mike Schmidt, who was originally from Michigan. He lives in Florida now, and Mike is a great fly designer. We actually tied one of his streamers, not here in the competition, but I tied one earlier. I think earlier this year, Mike's meal ticket. Mike's a big streamer tyer. And big, by big, I mean big in both ways. He likes to tie big streamers, but this is a more subtle fly. And Mike wanted to be here today to tease us and egg us on, but he's on vacation and he's driving. I think he's driving somewhere, so he couldn't make it. Anyway, Mike had some carp in a local lake that were feeding in very shallow water and were very spooky. And if you fish for carp and you enjoy fishing for carp, you know that they often can feed in very shallow water with their backs and their tails out of the water, and they can be super spooky. And most of us fish our carp flies with lead or solid metal eyes, like you'd put on a clouser, except a little bit smaller. This one's tied with bead chain, and I think the bead chain is really important in this fly. This fly has a really light entry in the water, and it sinks relatively slowly, which does a couple things. It allows you to kind of sink it right in front of the carp on a more natural level. And it's also, if you're fishing in rocky areas or weedy areas, it's less likely to get hung up on the bottom, because when you twitch it a little bit, it rises off the bottom instead of dragging along the bottom. Now, sometimes that's not good. Sometimes in a sandy or muddy bottom for carp, you want to drag your fly along the bottom. But if you're in weeds or rocks, you're going to get hung up, and then you're going to blow the cast. So anyway, I had a amazing day on carp fishing, and it wasn't just me. I was with my friend Tyler Atkins, and I put on this fly, and carp fishing suddenly became almost easy. And Tyler, when he fished the fly, also started having more success. We had one of the best days of carp fishing we've ever had. So the next time we go, the fly probably won't work at all, but we do know that it works really well. And I have a particular way that I like to tie it. Basically, it looks like, I think, the way Mike ties them. And Tim, you have your particular way of tying this fly.
I tie it so it looks like it did on Pinterest, I think. we couldn't find a whole lot of references to it, so whatever that is what I'm going for.
Yeah, it's a fly that I don't think you can buy anymore. Orvis sold it for a while, and Orvis dropped it. Hopefully, Orvis will bring it back because it's a really good fly. And Tim and I were talking before we went live, and Tim said, "Do you think this would be a good bonefish fly?" I think it would be a kick-ass bonefish fly. Absolutely be a great bonefish fly. I think it would be a really good redfish fly. I think it would be a good striped bass fly on the flats. I think it'll work for. I think this fly will work for a lot of things where you need a fly that doesn't spook the fish, that lands very lightly and sinks slowly. So especially things like tailing bonefish or bonefish in real shallow water, or redfish for that matter. And I know it also catches bluegills. I know that.
I got to ask you, Tom, what tippet were you using when you were using this? How big?
I typically use 12-pound or
Okay.
10-pound fluorocarbon. Some people use 16, but again, for the a little bit better sink rate and a little bit more stealth, I like to go with a little bit lighter tippet. And I don't break many fish off playing them. These fish are sometimes, 15 to 20 pounds. I don't break many fish off playing them, but we do lose a lot of flies when in the landing process, just getting the carp in and getting the fly out. We do break a lot of flies off. They're barbless, so they come out quickly. And I don't have a big boat net for my canoe, which is really stupid when you're fishing for 15-pound carp with two guys in a canoe.
A little trout net isn't going to do it.
No, I gotta find somebody. It's so funny. Sean Combs and I took a friend of ours who's a trout guide carp fishing a couple of weeks ago, and Sean was landing a big carp, and Brew went to net it for him, and he went to net it one-handed. And I said, "Oh, Brew, you're gonna need two hands." And he said, "Oh, yeah." So anyway, for those of you who don't do it, carp fishing is it's fascinating. It's all sight fishing. They're a fascinating creature. They're ugly and slimy and smelly, but they're really, really interesting to fish for. And with the warm water temperatures that we've been having throughout the country, we need to take some pressure off our trout fisheries. And I find carp fishing to be equally as interesting as trout fishing, if not often more interesting than trout fishing. And they fight like demons. They just don't give up. And you don't really have to worry about catching them in warm water. You don't even have to worry about handling them that carefully. They're so tough. They're just, I don't think you could kill one if you tried. And nobody cares if you kill a carp anyways, right? So. Anyway, okay. Enough about that. Enough about the fly. It's just a great fly, and I think it'll be. I think it would catch trout too. I think it looks enough like a little minnow or sculpin that it would catch trout.
Yeah, maybe even a little crayfish too.
Well, I think it sort of looks like a little crayfish, anyways. Yeah. I think that's why the
carp take it.
Yeah, because carp like small crayfish. They don't have a very big mouth, but they eat those baby crayfish, particularly the ones that have molted. And I think aren't crayfish kind of light colored, like tan colored when they molt?
Yeah, they are lighter.
So I have a feeling they say, "Ooh, a molted crayfish. I'm going to eat that." Anyway, we don't know what carp take it for, but they eat it. So, shall we start?
Let's start.
Okay.
And Joan told me that I have to let you start first.
Really? Why?
Because apparently I've started first like a lot, and
you've won a lot, so maybe.
Well, yeah. So maybe you start first.
Maybe it'll change my luck. All right. Okay. So I'm going to go over to my vise. And Flagler, you're taking, there you go.
Oh, I thought that was my screen for a second. Whew.
No, it wasn't. I bet it looks just like your screen, doesn't it?
Yeah, it kind of really does.
So I like this fly on this Gamakatsu Bonefish hook. It's black, so it doesn't flash. And, I like to keep flash out of a lot of my carp flies. A tiny bit of flash is good, but they get pretty particular. I like this for striped bass, too, and I like this hook for bonefish. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my thread, somewhere up near the eye. And I'm going to come back. I'm going to cover it. I'm going to come back quite a ways from where you would think you would put an eye on this fly. There's a lot of junk that goes up at the head of this fly. And that's probably a little bit too far back, maybe a third of the way back. There's a lot of junk that goes on the head of this fly. And I don't want to crowd the eye. So for the eyes for this, what I do, and this is a size 8 that I'm using, and that's the size I like for carp. You could tie it in 6, or you could even tie it in 10. I think if you go bigger than 6, they'd have trouble. They might not eat it because their mouth is pretty small. But I take this small bead chain and I dip it with a pair of clamps in Sally Hansen's. And then I hang the clamps over a trash can while it drips so I don't get nail polish all over the floor. And then I cut them off. And I'm a little bit insecure about using this Sally Hansen's nail polish because it smells. And I have a feeling I'm going to just cut 2 of these off with my wire cutters. I have a feeling that carp can smell flies pretty well because you're usually fishing them in slower current. And so I would recommend that you, after you tie these flies, you leave them out in the sun for a day or two so that all that solvent from the Sally Hansen's will outgas. If anybody has a better way of removing the smell, I'd be glad to hear it. I've tried washing them with soap and water. That doesn't help. They still smell. I've tried coating them with epoxy. And then you get the epoxy and Sally Hansen's smell combined. So that doesn't work so well. So they do sell black bead chain, and it's a plated black bead chain. And that's probably what I would go to if I were going to start from scratch. But I don't have any black bead chain. And I think the black color is important. So I'm just gonna place that black bead chain at a little bit of an angle. And I'm going to take maybe 2 or 3 or 4 turns in one direction. And then I'm going to tweak the eyes forward so that they line up. And then I'm going to go the other way. And I'm going to take lots of turns here. Because you don't want these eyes to spin. And then you're going to go around the base. Now, be really careful with bead chain eyes because you have this sharp piece there where you've cut them. So you got to be really careful that you don't cut your thread when you're going around the base of these bead chain eyes. Or nick your thread. And then test them to make sure they're secure. And you could put a drop of head cement if you want. I wouldn't use UV epoxy here because you might not get it down in. I just put a little bit of head cement there. You don't have to put, if you do this properly, you shouldn't have to put head cement in. All right, Tim.
Well, as
Great.
usual, Tom, we kind of have a really different tying sequence. So let me get the
Good.
the prep camera. Yeah. So rather than starting off with the bead chain eyes, I'm going to start off with the tail of the fly, the marabou, and it's this barred blood quill, really good looking stuff. I was saying to Tom, like the look of a calico crab or a lady crab for saltwater. It's just spot on. Anyway, they're kind of blood quills, and what I'm kind of picky about which ones. This one has kind of some truncated fibers, which I really don't like. This one, although it's got some funky stuff in here, because we're only going to be using the very tip of it, it's still really, really good. You can see the nice coloration. This one's good as well. But what I'm going to do is there's some stuff here, some fibers that aren't really they're not full length at the bottom, and they're just kind of scungy a little bit. And so I'm going to get rid of them. And then I'm left with something that looks about like that. Now, let me get my thread started before we go any further. My hook shank. And this is just tan. I think it's 6/0 thread. One of the things that I'm going to do, just because that hook is slippery and I want things to kind of really stay where I tie them in, I'm going to build a thread base and actually go down into the bend a little bit here. And then I'm going to kind of do open spiral wraps going back up, just to give a little grip, if you will. And I'm going to end probably about the same place for the eyes that Tom did. I guess a third of the way down the shank, maybe a little bit more. But then I'll go and almost always with marabou, I like to wet my fingers. I've kind of gotten away from the habit of actually sticking the feather in my mouth. And so it's going to be a little moist, but it helps me get it under control. One of the things that I found out with this fly, I tied quite a few of them practicing, is I like the tail fairly short. And so really about halfway between a shank and a full hook in length. And, I'm going to use my fingernail there kind of as a marking point. And I'm going to go all the way back to here, keep that tail fairly short, and then start tying in up here. I want to try to keep it on top of the hook shank. And I am going to take this and just snip it off kind of at a shallow angle. And as I'm wrapping back here, I'm going to sort of spread the material to either side of the hook. I kind of was thinking of it like almost like a lefty's deceiver, where you have material on either side. And then what I did is I found if I put a nice, really tight wrap on there, you can actually get the stuff to splay out the way deer hair would, which I think is pretty cool. Then I'm going to go back up.
Why don't you hit that hook point again?
I know that was, it was a little nervy right there.
As usual, you're doing everything backwards.
I know. Should I tie in the eyes, or should that be the next? Do you want to go again? I'm just building. I'm just covering up the body here. Just
go ahead. Go ahead. Tie in.
Tie in those eyes. Okay.
Yeah,
there's about where I'm going to tie them in. I also pretty much the same as Tom. One of the things I found, I dipped the bead chain in the Sally Hansen, but I was having some drip problems and blobbing problems. And what I found was if I used the the instant dry and cut it a little bit with rubbing alcohol. It much thinner and dries really quickly. But it takes 2 coats to do it that way, to get them nice and coated. It also it tends to make them a little more matte black finish as opposed to shiny black finish, which I sort of like for this fly. And so about the same position. Again, Tom is absolutely right. There's a lot that goes on at the head of this fly, and you don't want to crowd the eye. Go ahead, Tom. Sorry.
Does cutting it with rubbing alcohol take some of the smell away, or do they still smell?
It still smells pretty bad.
Yeah. I think if you leave them outside in the sun for a few days, most of that disappears.
Will go away. Yeah. So I do the same sequence with cloud, any kind of dumbbell eyes. I do quite a few cross wraps, just getting everything even. And again, like Tom said, watch those rough little edges on the eyes. So I've got a few cross wraps, and then I do what I call yoke wraps, where I'm going over under the hook shank and over on either side like that. And then I follow that with flat wraps, which draw everything in. And I think because I've got it on top of that marabou, I have a nice flat surface. You're not tying right onto metal on metal, and to me that holds it a little bit better. And so that's about where I am.
Do you put any head cement at this point?
No, I could, but those things are really on there. They're pretty good. They kind of mash down into that marabou base, and it seems to hold them pretty well. I have a couple other patterns, like intruders, where I'm using dumbbell eyes. I do the same thing as well. And that's all I got for now.
Okay.
You're up.
All right. So I'm going to tie in my tail. And like Tim, I am going to cover the hook shank with thread. And I'll probably cross wrap that too, just to get a little more grip on there. And I'm going to very similar feather choice to Tim. When you get a pack of marabou, you get various feathers.
That's being kind.
It's not all the same. Not all marabou is created equal. So, when you get a bunch of marabou, what you want to look for this fly is something, in fact, for most flies, I like it where it's fluffy all the way to the tip and nice and full. This is kind of thin up there. If you just have marabou that's really thin up at the tip, and there's not enough there that you think to create the profile you want, you can always take 2 feathers and lay them together and try to line them up, and then line them up a little bit better. And then you can use, you can get the same effect with 2 feathers. But hopefully you can find it in 1. But as you can see, there's lots of different variety in there. Here's another good one. And that's a nice fluffy one. In fact, maybe I'll use that one. So I'm going to measure. First, I'm going to measure my tail. And like Tim, I like this tail short. So I want it to be a little bit, just a shank length long. Then I'm going to switch hands. I'm going to pinch it there. And can't find my scissors. What did I do with me? Oh, there they are. I'm going to cut it off at just some random sort of short point. Doesn't matter right now. And then I'm going to just wet that part. So you can either stick it in your mouth, in which case you get a lot of fuzz in your mouth, or you can wet your fingers in a bowl of water or something. Doesn't matter.
Maybe
and
a
then,
sponge.
Yeah, sponge. And then I've got my point. I've still got my point there where I want this tail to go. And I'm going to tie this in with a pinch wrap. So I'm going to take a couple of light turns, and then I'm going to pinch it to the shank. And it gives you that same effect that Tim did in flaring that tail, because you do want this, I think, kind of fan-shaped. And I give that 3 or 4 turns till I get it where I want it. And then I'll take the rest of that marabou and carefully lift it up so it's all one piece. And just bring my scissors in here behind the eyes, bring the marabou around, and just cut it off. So different technique for putting it in, same effect. I'm going to hold onto my tail, and I'm going to come up with kind of spiral wraps over that marabou. And now I'll go back and smooth it out and go over it a few times. Now, I believe that when Mike Schmidt developed this fly, he used a body of dubbed ice dubbing. But the sample that I had had just a thread body. And I wasn't going to mess with that fly that I used because it worked so well that I wasn't going to screw around with it.
So like for the ice dub, was it like a dubbing noodle body, or was it loose, or?
Well, I don't know. See, the samples that I saw, and the flies that I was fishing were old photo samples from Orvis, but they had thread bodies. But I looked up the pattern in my own book, the Orvis Guide to Orvis Fly Tying Guide, and the pattern description was in there, and it called for a body of ice dubbing.
Ice dub, interesting.
Yeah. But anyway, the ones I fished successfully have thread body, so I said, well, let's use a thread body.
Yeah, I like the look of the thread body myself.
Yeah, me too.
I guess ice dub would be okay back there, but am I up?
Yeah, I think so.
Let me see if I can. All right, I do kind of a weird thing, and could cost me the competition today, but. Kind of a secondary collar, I guess. It's going to go behind a Hungarian partridge feather collar, kind of soft hackle collar, but is a dubbed collar, and it's tan UV ice dub, which is just about the greatest stuff in the world. Close behind pink UV ice dub. And I'm just going to pull a very small slip. I know that's a little hard to see, guys, but kind of matches my tying bench. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take scissors and just snip off one end, snip it off square, and then a handy little chip clip. I'm going to go like that. Spin it around, and I don't want this collar to be very long at all. And so I'm going to trim that off. So about maybe, I don't know, ½ inch between both sides, and so I'll have a 1/4 of an inch on either side. I'm going to use a dubbing noodle to do that. So let me get my expensive video backdrop positioned correctly.
Oh,
What I'm gonna
I have to get one of those expensive videos.
Mine came from the gym. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my middle finger, excuse me, guys, and I'm just going to make a dubbing loop. and close it off at the top like that. The reason I use my middle finger is it allows me to close down the dubbing loop with the other two. And so it's a little tough with camera and everything here. But I'm going to take the ice dub, insert it in there. So, so it's about even, and not really, really critical. And then put a little dubbing whirl in there, give it a nice little spin. And kind of critical here, I found, is again, there's not a lot of space up there, and so I don't want to be winding a lot of clumped up UV ice dub. That's just going to take up space on the hook shank. Doesn't do me any good really at all. So I pick it out a little bit. You can use a toothbrush if you want. And if I have anything that's like overly long, I'm just going to kind of trim it off now. You can trim it off later. It's not a big deal. Now, rather than wrapping with this big, huge dubbing whirl, and I just find it much easier if I take a plunger style hackle pliers, and I like to loop around at least once before I snip it off. It just makes the whole package a lot easier to maneuver. Zoom in real quick. Okay, I'm gonna move my tying thread out just a little bit. I think I'm out of focus.
I think you're good.
That looks a little better.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna start wrapping. I want to make sure that dubbing begins right at the front edge of the eyes if I can. And just sweep it back like you're tying in a, almost like you're tying in a soft tackle feather. Just keep on sweeping it back. It's a little messy here. These fibers are hard to keep back and out of the way, and you go to grab them, and the bead chain eyes are in the way. I know it seems a little weird, but
yeah,
they kind of really get in the way. And I can hold them back just a little bit with wraps of tie-in thread. End right there. And then what I do, just to get them all nice, and I'll snip these guys off just so they don't get in the way. Oh, that was close to my tying thread.
Oh.
And then just to get them spread out, you give it a little flick. See where things land. And so that's kind of that secondary collar that'll go behind a Hungarian partridge collar. Help to prop it up, I'm sure, and just add a little bit of nice shimmer back there. And that's back to you, Tom.
Well, as usual, Mr. Flagler, I do it totally differently, which I hope is informative for people. Julia, do we have any questions? Are we still good? No burning questions.
We actually haven't had any questions. No.
Okay.
Surprisingly.
Okay.
Wow.
What's that?
Wow. We said
I know.
wow. Okay.
All right. I'll let you know though.
Okay. So I'm going to do this totally differently from Tim. And right or wrong, I don't know. But we're using the same materials. So I'm also going to use this tan, UV tan ice dubbing, which I love. And I am going to take a large amount, a good hunk of this stuff.
Oh,
What?
what? Sorry, I didn't know I said that out loud.
And I'm going to kind of just line it up, and I'm going to tweak it to kind of even out the ends and make it a little bit fuller. But I've got this just big honking hunk of ice dubbing. And so I kind of got it so it's short and lined up. And then I'm going to come over to my hook, and I'm going to...
There was a question about what dipping the beads does.
What dipping the beads turns them black.
Okay.
You can buy black plated beads, which if I had some, I would use them. Or if Orvis sold them, but we don't. It's it's kind of an obscure tying material, but the pattern called for a black bead, and the pattern I fished had a black bead, and it worked really well. So I'm not messing with it.
I also read somewhere that if you use like a grill lighter or a lighter, you could effectively blue the beads to make them darker. But what I found that it just effectively burned my fingers, and that was about it.
Oh.
Yeah.
I might try that. So anyways, I got this big hunk of dubbing, and I got a fly there. I'm going to turn my fly upside down. I like to tie the this is what's actually going to be the back of the wing, right? And come forward and just cover that with thread a little bit. And not directly in front of the eyes. You want your thread to be, let me angle this down a little bit. Change the camera angle here. You want this wing flares too much if you tie it right in front of the eyes. And I want it to just about get to the hook point, maybe a little bit, or hook bend, maybe right to the hook bend. And then I'm going to just take about 3 turns straight down. Make sure that stays in place. Actually, preferably the camera's in the way. I would like to do it like that. And then I also like to just flatten it a little bit with my thumbnail. And I've got, of course, I got a big hunk of ice dub there. Maybe take a couple more turns to make sure it's secure. And then I take this big hunk of ice dub and I twist it like so, which makes it easy to get your scissors in there and trim it off. Because this stuff, when it gets in the eye, can really be a pain. And then I will further secure that where I cut it off with nice, really tight turns of thread. But I want a lot of dubbing in there. I don't want this sparse. You want a big hunk of dubbing because that's what helps this thing get a really light water entry. And then I'm going to flip it back. So this is now the underside of my fly that's on top. And I'm going to take that hunk of dubbing that I had, and I'm just going to tweak it and twist it a little bit to kind of taper it. So,
hey, Tom?
Yeah.
Bill was asking, after you explain this, if you could talk about what other species this pattern could be used for.
Oh, we did in the beginning.
Okay. If it comes back around, just for the folks who joined later.
Okay. So I'm just tapering that a little bit. And you could probably get, another couple of flies out of this hunk of ice dub. So then I'll come back to the fly. And this is going to be my throat. So I'm going to make this a little bit shorter, just a bit. And come over the top. Tweak it a little bit to make sure you get good coverage. 3 or 4 good turns there. And then again, I'll take that dubbing, twist it so that I can get my scissors in there and get all the fibers. Cut it off. And sometimes I have a little bit longer fibers on the far side where my scissors didn't quite get it. But you do want to get this stuff out of the eye now, because it will be a pain when you try to tie your fly on. And then I'm going to really secure that dubbing in there. Nice, tight, really firm turns back and forth. Like so. Now at this point, if you have a cauterizing tool, which I use more than I used to, then you carefully come in, got to really steady your hand and just come in, and you can clean up any of those fibers that are sticking out over the eye. Got to be super careful that you don't get that near your thread. But it does help clean up those fibers around the eye. Okay, Tim.
All right. Well, apparently someone didn't use the same picture on Pinterest for reference that I did. Yeah.
What? Someone didn't use the same picture for what?
The same picture on Pinterest that I did for reference.
Oh, well, they look the same. Our flies look the same.
Okay.
I think they look the same, don't you?
Yeah, they had just the sparsest of collar on there.
Oh.
For just as a little, almost an indicator, just a hint of material behind. But
okay.
But I like to look at
that's a it's a different style, right? And
yeah, I like the look of yours because it looked more like a bonefish fly, with the point covered up, and I kind of really like that idea. And maybe what will be the top side being a little bit longer than the bottom, than the throat, if you will. So it's gonna sink and sink nicely. So yeah, I like the way you did it. Anyway, let me go here first. Get focused. The
lesson learned: don't get your fly tying instructions from Pinterest. I think it's better for recipes and needlepoint, isn't it?
Yep. And and log cabins too. If you ever want to build a little log cabin, that's your go-to. Little tiny home. So this is a full Hungarian partridge skin. A friend of mine does these. He just does an amazing
that's
job.
Beautiful. That's really nice.
Really is. They are my prized possessions. And I like to use the feathers up here. If for once, you can use feathers that are fairly long, nicely marked fibers.
Right.
Like this guy. Usually we're down here and pulling wicked teeny stuff off the neck, and this you got a nice big feather. Anyway, I on Orvis Tips and Techniques a couple weeks ago, I did some soft tackle techniques that and I'll show them to you here, but they were met with quite a bit of resistance online. There were some I don't want to say haters, but guys that had very, very different opinions on how to tie in a soft tackle collar.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
controversy with partridge hackle. Oh,
yeah. Oh my. And the reason for doing it really was if you're having trouble tying it in, you're breaking stems and things like that. There were a few things that you might do. I never said this is the way it has to be done. Anywho, so what I like to do is get the feather like that with the tip out here. And one of the things that I found real handy is a pair of good tweezers. And I'm going to just grab the very tip and then preen these fibers down to expose the tip. It'll show up better on the other camera.
So what was the controversy about?
Well, I'll show you in a minute, Tom, because and I understand why. You know, there you know, proper ways of doing it, and you know, it's which way the hackle flares. And but what I did is I've cut the tip off, and if you, this is real hard to see with the, but I have the fibers bent back, and I'm gonna get hold of the ones that are bent back. Okay. And what that does, I did not mean to trap all these guys in the process. That was not cool. But what that does is it means you're not just grabbing onto the stem. You're grabbing hackle fibers as well. And so you've strengthened that point dramatically down there. And so if you put tension on the stem, it's not as likely to break at that really weak point. Anyway, that was last week.
And what did people say was the proper way?
I believe the proper, somebody said you tie it in with cup side up by the butt end of the stem.
What?
And then you grab the tip and wrap it. And I'm like, if there's any weak part on the feather, it's going to be the very tip. And he was like, well, if it breaks, you just reclip. And I still didn't really get where they were going with it, but you know, to me, it's whatever you prefer, whatever works for you. You know, maybe someone else feathers are dried out, more brittle. You know, just whatever port in the storm. You know, whatever you can do. So anyway, hopefully that connection is nice and tough. I just kind of bend the stem down through my fingers to get those to lay back. Now, when I go to wrap, and this, again, this is one of those things that's kind of it's a weird little problem with this pattern in that you have the dumbbell eye or the bead chain eyes back there, and they really kind of mess you up in terms of wrapping.
It's funny, I don't have that problem.
Okay. And so I found there are a couple, usually I do it neater than that, but that was pretty terrible. There are a couple ways, you know, I have a little tube that I can shove this stuff back.
Is that a Tenkara fly?
It looked like it, didn't it? So
I'm bad.
yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm bad today. I had a bad fishing day yesterday. I'm nasty.
So just a little tube, you can you know, use a half-inch tool or whatever, just get that stuff shoved back there. Again, oh, and I've got a nice one sticking out of the front, which will allow me to show you something else
That's an antenna.
Yes, the antenna. All little crayfish have them. So I'm just going to do a quick whip finish here, but we'll give you a little preview of what the Orvis tips and techniques is for tomorrow morning.
Oh.
Yeah. I have finally found, I'm not going to ruin the whole thing. I'll just do it. Okay. So that's looking pretty good, but I got a wonky fiber there. So I got two wonky fibers.
Antennae.
But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here, break that one, get that one, and even, come here, you. Even that little teeny one. Give it another little flick.
Still there. It's still there. I can see it.
No, it's gone. That's a fiber.
Okay.
So right there, guys, that is the tip for tomorrow on Orvis. Something I've been looking for a long time. little drop of head cement, and I'm done.
I wanted
So yeah,
to.
even with a messed up hackle wrap, I think it's okay.
Yeah, I wanted to answer a few questions before I continue.
Yeah, good.
Roger asked, "Does this fish point up or point down?" Definitely, fishes point up, right, Roger, and that's because the dumbbell eyes keel it and keep it riding hook point up. Keith asked, "The throat on Tom's fly is quite heavy. Would it not flip the fly over?" No, again, Keith, because of that keeling of the dumbbell eyes, they're just enough weight to keel it to make it ride hook point up. And Big Ron asks, "What exactly does the ice dubbing represent?" And I don't have a clue what it represents. In this case, what I'm tying to imitate is a fly that was really successful. So I'm tying this fly exactly the way the fly I fished. Sometimes when you're imitating things, you're not imitating a particular thing in nature, you're imitating somebody else's fly. And that's what I'm doing here.
Well, and ice, see if you agree, Tom. Ice dub is one of those things that I'm not, like you, I don't know exactly what it imitates on a bug, or I just know that stuff is extremely attractive to fish. They just, there's something about ice dub, and I don't want to. There are other other things that work, but ice dub is a really, really interesting material, and I finding that it's incorporated in a lot of the flies that work really well for me.
Yep. The other thing you can use, and I have used on this fly, which is very similar, is Senyo's laser dub, which that works really well. It's a little fluffier and it has a little less flash. So if you have some Senyo's laser dub, that will also work for this pattern.
Yeah, and that dubs really well. I think easier than a good bit easier than ice dub.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, so I'm gonna wind my hun, and we'll be done. Oh, I didn't mean to pun there. And like Tim, I have a Hungarian partridge skin, and if you can, these are not cheap. They're quite expensive these days. They're getting really hard to get, but I would advise you, if you use a lot of Hungarian partridge, to get a skin, because you get the option of different colors and different sizes. And I take my feather not from way up on the top, because I use those for tails on my carp nasties, but I take it from down here a little bit toward the middle, and I'm looking for a feather that's kind of uniform, symmetrical. That one looks pretty good right there. I'm going to pluck it. I'm going to remove all the fuzz, just like Tim did. And then I just hold this by the tip with my fingers and pull back till I get them worked down, like so. And then, I can't believe we haven't had the question yet, but yes, you can use speckled hen saddle for this. The color isn't quite as nice as Hungarian partridge. Not quite as beautifully barred as Hungarian partridge. I'm going to back my camera up a bit here so you can see a little bit more and re-angle it. Whoops. I hit the wrong adjustment. There, how's that look?
Oh, that's good.
It's impressionistic. So I am going to just tie in this tip, and I'm going to just capture the tip, and I'm going to really, really bear down on that so that it doesn't pull out. Snip the end. And one of the things I find with Hungarian partridge when you wind it is that you don't grab it by the very end, because often that stem is kind of weak and it often splits and comes off in your hackle pliers. So I like to grab that stem about in the middle, about halfway to the feather. I think that works better. And then I'll wet my fingers a little bit and just stroke this back. And when you wind the hackle, try to keep it cupping back. And by twisting the hackle fibers, because this is naturally going to twist the hackle fibers in a little bit of a clockwise direction, or actually any direction it works that keeps that cup facing back. It makes it a lot easier. So I see I'm twisting that again so that it isn't going to cup back. Sometimes you lose track of exactly where it is, but that gives you a fairly nice swept back look. And like Tim, I've got a few fibers that I need to get rid of. But you can actually sweep these back with your fingers and put them in place so you don't have to trim them. If you can get in there between the small hook and the little eyes, probably that little tool Tim had would make it better. That's a sexy fly for a carp fly, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh. I forgot my whip.
I do like the thicker dubbing too, Tom. I really do.
Yeah, it just, I think it helps the entry. It helps the soft entry in the water.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you could do that with a dubbing loop. It would be awfully bulky.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. You might be able to. And then I'll just put a drop of head cement on there. Let it soak in a little bit. And that's the fuzzy niblet, with apologies to Mike Schmidt if we did it wrong. Maybe we did, Tim. Who knows?
Yeah,
I use the Orvis fly tying guide. You use Pinterest.
Well, Pinterest apparently, according to Joan, went back to the original Orvis website for it. The picture, that's where it came from, which I guess isn't up anymore, but it was the picture that was on Orvis.
That's the same place I got my picture for the book. Let me look at it. It's right in the back of the book. Here, let's take a look at it. Yeah, there's the fuzzy niblet. That has a pretty
Pretty thin collar. Yeah, that's the same picture I was going by.
Yeah. As I said, I was going by the sample that I had.
Yeah.
Anyway, different styles, and we don't know which one would work better. It probably depends on the species and the conditions, right?
Yeah. But again, to me the most interesting part, Tom, is how different the tying sequence was between how you tie it and how I tie it, and
Yeah.
the result is remarkably similar.
It is. It is.
But yeah, just to show you, there's more than one way to skin a cat, I guess.
Yeah. Brian has a good question. How would you fish this fly for carp, and what retrieve would it be? Brian, that's a really good question. Sometimes carp will, particularly if they're aggressive, they haven't been fished a lot, or they haven't been poked with arrows a lot, and they're not so spooky, they'll actually chase down a fly. They can be quite aggressive predators. Most of the time, you'll see them tailing, actually feeding on the bottom and rooting around, eating crayfish, damselfly nymphs, leeches, who knows. I think they eat almost anything they can get in their mouth. But often, you just move the fly a tiny bit before the fish gets to your fly. You cast it beyond the fish and ahead of it, and then drag it in front of the fish, let it drop right in front of its nose when it's still a ways away, and watch the fish as it comes over the vicinity of the fly. And you often have to watch the body language of the fish. I was talking to Tim earlier. I'm not even sure how I know when a carp takes a fly, but I watch the fish very carefully. It's all sight fishing. And I look for their body language, and I look for that, oh, there's something, and, turning their head and kind of pinning something to the bottom. But I'll also very gently draw on the fly, both to give it just the tiniest bit of movement. But then if the carp takes it, I can feel that resistance, and then I can strip strike. But, it's that's why it's so interesting, because it's almost mystical. hate to get all fuzzy on you, but it's but it's like sight fishing for many fish, sight nymphing for trout, or fishing for bonefish, that you've got to watch the reaction of the fish as well as know almost exactly where your fly is. And a lot of it's guesswork. A lot of times you strike to nothing. Or sometimes, like happened the other day to me, I watched the fish pin something, and I said, "Oh, that's interesting. He's feeding." And Tyler said, "I think it's your fly." And I went, "Oh," and there he was. so you screw up too. Anyway.
What do you think, Tom? Give a little spin. See where we are.
Oh, the spin. Yes.
Yeah, the spin.
The spin.
The dreaded spin.
The spin.
Get my camera turned on here. Oh, get a little low on batteries.
That's all right.
Might be
all they need to look at is mine anyway. So. The dreaded spin.
Are we allowed to preen?
No.
No. Just spin.
Your preening is over.
Oh,
I don't care. You can preen all you want. You can trim it if you want.
See, I want to get rid of that. Again, use my newfound.
All right, folks on Orvis Fly Fishing, the poll is live. Apologies to the people on the other networks. We could only do a poll on one of the Facebook Lives. So pop on over to Orvis Fly Fishing if you want to cast your vote.
You still spinning? Do I have to keep spinning?
Kind of digging. I was not real happy with that collar when I tied it in, the partridge, but it's kind of came around.
I think it looks good. I think it might be a better bonefish fly with that sparse collar than this heavy collar. Yeah.
The other thing with your collar though is that that dubbing is top and bottom, kind of like a wing, and I like the way that looks better. That's just maybe me, but.
So are you voting for Tom?
I'm voting for Tom.
I'll vote for you then, Tim. I'll vote for Tim.
All right, folks, we have a winner. And the winner is Tom with 84% of the votes.
Yeah,
Wow.
Tom. Nicely
Wow.
done.
Congratulations, Tom. Nicely
I
done.
finally won.
I know. I thought you'd be happy.
That's excellent.
I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled.
Yeah, it was the dubbing, I think. The dubbing cost me.
Yeah.
I got
think
something
so.
I got to work on,
Yeah.
Neat
Well,
fly though, Tom. That was a good choice. I really.
It was fun too. It was fun to
Yeah.
see how you interpreted it and how I interpreted it. We both only were able to look at a finished fly. Neither of us had any instructions on how to tie it. Right? We had to kind of dissect the fly in our minds and figure out how it was done.
Yeah, very, very cool. Thank you, Mr. Schmidt.
Yes, thank you, Mike. Mike, maybe Mike will watch this on the reruns after he's back from vacation. We'll send him a link and see what Mike thinks.
Yeah.
See the way he tied it.
Yeah, he could say you need that really sparse collar on there. That's what he might say. That
he might. Well, then we could have a recount. Okay, so
cool bug.
What is it? 1 month from today, Julia, we're gonna have another one, and it's Tim's turn to pick the fly.
That's right, Tim. It'll be your turn. I think it is Monday, August 9th, so less than a month actually. So you gotta start practicing now.
Yeah, that's why we had to push it Monday, August 9th. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be fresh off a plane from Montana, but we'll see what happens.
You won't have time to practice.
Yeah, that's gotta think of something to trip you up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's easy. You usually trip me up, so. That was fun.
Yeah. Well, and thank you everybody for showing up. It's I know here in New Jersey it's just a hot, nasty summer day, humid. And
let's see, I have a question for Bill. Would you change colors for bonefish? Bill, I'd fish this color over a light colored bottom, but in general, bonefish you want to fish try to match the bottom color because most of the prey matches the bottom. So over a darker bottom, like a mixed bottom or turtle grass spot, you might want to fish a brown or an olive or a green one, or pink sometimes works. But yeah, you could definitely change the color for bonefish or for redfish. Pick the redfish colors that work best in your area, and then modify this fly. And I probably tie this on a 4 or a 6 for redfish too. I wouldn't tie it in at 8, although you never know. I think you want a little bit bigger one for redfish. Probably a good shrimp.
Yeah, but by changing, ice dub colors, marabou colors, and thread colors, I think that Hungarian partridge is something you'd want to keep just for the fine dark markings in it, just to look, what I mean? And the barred marabou, whatever color it is, I like the idea of barring in there better than plain.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, different colors of ice dub and thread color. That real versatile and changeable pattern, I think.
Yep. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for tuning in today. Looks like we had a pretty good crowd today.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And thank you for your great questions and your support. And if you have not tried carp fishing, particularly with the hot weather we're having nearly everywhere in the United States this summer, take pressure off of our trout streams, off those cold water resources. Give the trout a break. We stress them when we catch them and release them, and nobody's gonna worry if you stress a carp. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about them, and they're just about indestructible. They need very low. They have very low oxygen requirements. It's pretty hard to hurt them. The warmer the weather gets, the better the carp fishing can get. They like warm water. Although they'll feed in cold water pretty well too. But they are quite active in warm weather and warm water. So give it a try. I think you'll really have a lot of fun. It's a fascinating way of sight fishing.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
See you in a month.
Yep.